Good evening, and welcome to another story where truth sleeps and whispers never die. It was a warm September morning in the quiet town of Belen, New Mexico. The kind of morning where the sun rises gently over the mesas, casting golden light on the empty roads. 19-year-old Tara Calico was full of energy and optimism. She had a routine. She rarely broke a daily bike ride along State Road 47, a peaceful route stretching across the desert landscape. Tara was a college student, bright, athletic, and deeply loved by her family. That morning, she told her mother she would be back by noon, but she never returned. When she did not show up for lunch, her mother, Patty, felt a sharp pang of worry, not the mild kind that fades away, but the deep instinct that something is wrong. Tara was known for being responsible and punctual, so when the clock struck 1, then 2, and her familiar voice was nowhere to be heard, the Calico home filled with silence, the kind that only grows heavier with every passing hour. That afternoon, Patty got in her car and drove down the same road Tara had taken. For miles, there was nothing, no sound, no trace of her daughter, until she noticed something strange by the roadside. A fragment of a cassette tape, then a piece of a broken Walkman. It looked as if someone had dropped them one by one, almost like a trail of breadcrumbs. To some, it seemed random, but to Patty, it felt like a message, as if Tara had tried to leave clues behind. Local authorities soon joined the search, but the empty desert offered few answers. Witnesses reported seeing a light-colored pickup truck following a young woman on a bike earlier that morning, yet no license plate or driver could be identified. Days turned into weeks, and the trail went cold. As time passed, Tara's case became one of the most haunting missing person stories in American history. The community refused to forget her flyers, searches, and news reports kept her face alive. But years later, something unexpected reignited the mystery. In 1989, nearly a year after Tara's disappearance, a Polaroid photograph surfaced in a Florida parking lot. It showed a young woman and a boy, both gagged and bound inside what looked like the back of a van. The woman's face bore a striking resemblance to Tara's same age, same features, even the same small scar near her leg. The discovery shocked the nation and reopened questions that had been buried in time. Was Tara still alive when the photo was taken? Who was the boy beside her? And if the picture was real, how did it travel across the country? This was not just a missing persons case anymore. It became a puzzle that tested the limits of forensics, human memory, and truth itself. Tonight, we revisit that chilling Ride the One that began under the New Mexico sun and ended in silence. This is the story of Tara Calico and the photograph that refuses to let her be forgotten. When investigators retraced Tara Calico's path, they noticed something deeply unsettling, as if the road itself was whispering fragments of what had happened. Scattered along State Road 47, just a few miles from her home, were the faint signs of struggle, a piece of a broken Walkman, a cassette tape, and faint tire marks that did not match Tara's bicycle. To her mother, Patty, these were not random. She believed Tara had realized someone was following her, and that she had dropped those objects, deliberately small breadcrumbs of resistance, a desperate attempt to be found. It was not just a theory born from hope. Tara was known for her quick thinking, the kind of girl who always had a plan. If she sensed danger, it was exactly what she would have done. Despite these traces, the investigation at that time lacked the tools we take for granted today. There were no cell phones, no GPS, no surveillance cameras. Detectives relied on witness memory, sketches, and gut instinct. Several people recalled seeing a light-colored pickup truck, possibly a Ford, trailing close behind Tara that morning. But no one could identify the driver. The desert sun had erased too many details. As days turned into weeks, Search teams combed through brush riverbeds and remote fields, but the desert was merciless. It swallowed evidence, hid answers, and left behind only the echoes of questions. The bike Tara rode her mother's, pink Huffy, was never recovered. It was as if both girl and bicycle had vanished into thin air. The town of Belen began to change after that. A quiet fear took hold. Parents warned their daughters not to go cycling alone. State Road 47, once a symbol of calm, became a road of unease, a place people passed quickly, eyes down, hearts heavy. For Tara's family, hope was a fragile thread. Patty appeared on local news stations, pleading for information, offering rewards, and sharing her daughter's photo again and again. She refused to let the world forget. Each year that passed without an answer was another wound, but she never gave up. Then, almost a year later, something extraordinary surfaced, something that reignited both hope and horror. A strange Polaroid photograph, found in a parking lot nearly 2,000 kilometers away, would turn this small-town tragedy into a national mystery. In the photo, a young woman and a boy sat bound and gagged inside what looked like a van. Both were terrified, and yet eerily calm, as if waiting for someone to find them. The woman's resemblance to Tara was uncanny. The same age, same hair, same build, even a distinctive scar on her leg in the exact same place. It was the first tangible piece of possible evidence connecting Tara's disappearance to something larger, darker, and far beyond New Mexico. But was the photograph real or just a cruel coincidence? That single question would ignite a debate that would span decades across families, law enforcement, and forensic experts, each convinced of their own version of the truth. Almost a year after Tara Calico vanished, a strange discovery in Port Street, Joe, Florida, would send shockwaves across the United States. It was a humid June morning in 1989 when a woman walking through a convenience store parking lot noticed something lying on the ground, a Polaroid photograph, face down, near a white van. Curious, she picked it up. The image made her heart stop. In the photo were two people, a young woman and a boy, both gagged with duct tape, their hands bound behind them. They appeared to be sitting inside a van, its interior bare, lit only by the light sneaking in from a window. The woman had long brown hair, soft features, and a small, visible scar on her leg. Her eyes, wide and alert, seemed to plead silently for help. The woman who found the photo immediately contacted police. Within hours, FBI agents were involved. They traced the area, interviewed witnesses, and even set up roadblocks, hoping to locate the mysterious white van seen earlier that day. But the vehicle and whoever might have dropped the photo had vanished. When the picture was released to the public, Patty Dole, Tara's mother, saw it on the evening news. The moment she looked at it, she froze. She recognized the girl instantly, the hair, the build, the small scar on the leg that matched Tara's bicycle accident years earlier. Even the blue striped pillow in the photo resembled one from Tara's bedroom. To Patty, it was not just a resemblance. It was her daughter, alive, somewhere, still fighting to be found. The image quickly spread across newspapers and television networks, turning Tara's disappearance from a local tragedy into a national obsession. Everyone wanted answers. Who took the photo? Where was it shot? Was it genuine? For investigators, the Polaroid became both a clue and a curse. It offered the first real sign that Tara might still be alive, but also raised impossible questions. If the photo was real, who was the boy beside her? And how did a young woman missing from New Mexico end up photographed in Florida, almost 2,000 kilometers away? Some believed it was undeniable proof of abduction. Others whispered darker theories that it could be a cruel hoax, staged by someone seeking attention. Still, for Tara's family, it was hope fragile, painful hope that maybe she was out there, waiting for someone to connect the dots. From that day forward, the photo became a haunting symbol, one single image holding both terror and possibility. And yet, it was only the beginning of a mystery that would grow more complicated with every new discovery. When the mysterious Polaroid photograph of the bound young woman and boy began circulating nationwide, law enforcement agencies from multiple countries became involved. The image had captured not only the public's imagination, but also the attention of experts who hoped to solve one of America's most haunting disappearances. The first major analysis came from Scotland Yard, which was asked to review the photo using facial comparison techniques. After examining bone structure, proportions, and distinctive features, their experts concluded there was a strong possibility that the woman in the picture was indeed Tara Calico. That conclusion spread like wildfire. Newspapers ran headlines suggesting Tara might still be alive somewhere. For her mother, Patty Dole, it was validation of everything she had believed since the day Tara vanished. She told reporters that she knew it in her heart that the eyes in that photograph were her daughter's eyes. The glint of recognition, the same quiet fear, the same posture she had seen 1,000 times before. But the certainty did not last long. When the Los Alamos National Laboratory conducted its own forensic examination, their experts reached a completely different result. Using computer-based facial mapping advanced for its time, they determined that the girl in the photo was not Tara Calico. The differences, they said, were subtle but clear: facial length, chin shape, eye spacing. Then came the FBI's independent review, which only deepened the mystery. The Bureau declared the image inconclusive. In other words, they could neither confirm nor deny that it was Tara. For every point that matched, another seemed to contradict it. The photo became a puzzle that science could not solve, a ghost suspended between truth and illusion. The conflicting results fractured the investigation. Some detectives were convinced Tara was still alive, hidden somewhere by captors who might have moved her across state lines. Others believed the photo was nothing more than a cruel coincidence, perhaps even a staged image unrelated to the case. Meanwhile, the public's obsession grew. Television programs, tabloids, and true crime magazines debated the photo endlessly. People wrote letters claiming they recognized the boy or the van. None of the tips led anywhere solid. For Tara's family, it was agony. Each new report brought a spark of hope, only to be extinguished by another expert's doubt. The photograph meant to bring clarity had instead become a mirror reflecting fear, confusion, and desperation. And yet, beneath all the analysis and argument, one truth remained: a young woman had vanished, and her loved ones were still waiting for answers. Whether the girl in the Polaroid was Tara or not, someone in that picture needed help, and that thought haunted everyone who saw it. As investigators searched for any thread of truth in Tara Calico's disappearance, one detail kept resurfacing in witness statements: a light-colored pickup truck. It was not an unusual sight in New Mexico, where dusty roads and wide stretches of desert made pickups almost invisible in plain view. But on that particular morning, several locals noticed one behaving differently. Multiple witnesses recalled seeing a white or light gray truck, possibly with a camper shell, driving slowly behind a young woman on a pink bicycle along State Road 47. Some said it trailed her for miles, never passing, never turning off. Others claimed they saw it parked further down the road, as if waiting. No one could make out the license plate. The driver's face remained a blur behind the windshield's glare. At first, it seemed like an odd coincidence, maybe someone heading the same direction, maybe nothing at all. But when the news spread that Tara had vanished, the memories of that silent truck began to take on a chilling new meaning. Detectives scoured the area for leads. They questioned local residents, farm workers, and travelers who might have been on that stretch of highway that morning. A few described the vehicle as a 1950s or early 60s Ford pickup, faded paint, dust-caked windows. Others thought it might have been newer, perhaps a late model Chevrolet. The descriptions varied, but one detail stayed consistent: the slow, deliberate way the truck followed her. The theory that soon emerged was grim. Investigators began to suspect that whoever was inside the truck may have approached or intercepted Tara on the open road, a place where help was miles away. The stretch of State Road 47 where she rode that day was isolated, bordered by brush and open fields. If something had happened there, it could have gone unseen by anyone for hours. In later years, one retired Sheriff, Rene Rivera, would make a startling claim that two young men, local residents, were responsible for Tara's disappearance. According to Rivera, they were driving a truck matching that description when they accidentally struck her while following too closely. Panicking, they allegedly hid her body with help from family members. Yet, Rivera admitted he had no physical evidence, no body, no confession, only what he called credible information. Without proof, the story remained only that a story. The truck, like the girl it followed, vanished without a trace. Still, for Tara's family, the detail of that vehicle became a symbol of everything they could not forget. Someone out there knew who was driving that morning. Someone knew what happened on that lonely road. Every few years, the tip resurfaces again, another possible sighting, another claim. But even after decades, no one has ever been charged. The light-colored pickup remains one of the ghosts of the Calico case, a moving shadow that may hold the truth about what really happened that September morning. Years after the desert roads of New Mexico swallowed every trace of Tara Calico, a new version of events began to emerge, not from a stranger or a drifter, but from within the very system meant to uncover the truth. In 2008, Rene Rivera, the former sheriff of Valencia County, stepped forward with a stunning claim. After years of unofficial digging and listening to rumors that refused to die, Rivera said he believed he knew what had happened to Tara that morning back in 1988. According to him, two local teenage boys, known to the community, were driving a pickup truck the same type witnesses had seen trailing Tara along State Road 47. Rivera claimed the boys had followed her out of curiosity, perhaps trying to get her attention. But something went terribly wrong. He said one of them may have struck Tara with the truck, possibly by accident. Panic set in. The story, as Rivera told it, was that the boys feared the consequences. Instead of calling for help, they decided to hide the evidence with the alleged help of their parents. Tara, he said, may have been injured or even killed instantly. Her body, according to the rumor, was taken somewhere remote and buried. Rivera's theory set off a wave of public anger and confusion. If he knew what had happened, if there were names, details, and a motive, why had no one been arrested? Why was the case still considered unsolved? The answer was as frustrating as it was tragic. Rivera admitted that he had no physical evidence to prove the story. No confession, no body, no vehicle, no forensic link. The people he suspected, he said, had all refused to cooperate, and without hard proof, prosecutors could not build a case that would stand in court. When pressed by reporters, Rivera insisted, "We know what happened. We know who did it." But knowledge without evidence is not justice. For Tara's family, the revelation was like reopening an old wound. Her mother, Patty, had spent decades clinging to hope that Tara was still alive somewhere. Rivera's claim crushed that hope, replacing it with rage and disbelief. "If you know," she said in an interview, "then why do not you act?" The alleged suspects were never publicly named, protected by both the law and the absence of definitive proof. Many locals still whisper that Rivera's story might be true, that small-town loyalties and family ties kept the truth buried as deeply as Tara's body might be. Others believed the sheriff's version was only speculation, a desperate attempt to explain the inexplicable. In the end, his words added yet another layer to an already tangled mystery, a version of the story that felt heartbreakingly possible, yet legally powerless. And so, the case of Tara Calico remained frozen in limbo between rumor and reality, confession and silence, waiting for the kind of evidence that could finally bring her home. By 2013, the disappearance of Tara Calico had already haunted New Mexico for 25 years. Generations had grown up seeing her smiling face on missing person posters, TV specials, and online message boards. For most, the story had become a chilling legend, one of those cases everyone had heard about, but no one could solve. But for investigators in Valencia County, it was not just a story. It was an unfinished chapter that demanded to be reopened. That year, a new task force was assembled to re-examine Tara's case from the ground up. This was not a symbolic gesture, it was a serious, methodical effort to bring modern science to a 1980s mystery. Advances in forensic technology, especially in DNA recovery, image enhancement, and digital archiving, had given detectives tools that did not exist when Tara first disappeared. Old evidence boxes, long gathering dust, were reopened. Each item, photos, reports, witness notes, scraps of possible physical evidence, was re-examined under new light. Investigators wanted to know whether something crucial had been overlooked decades ago when the case was handled under the limitations of its time. The team included state police officers, forensic specialists, and FBI consultants, all collaborating to reanalyze leads that had once gone cold. They revisited the Polaroid photograph, applying updated imaging software and facial recognition techniques to compare the woman in the photo with known pictures of Tara. They also reviewed earlier interviews, including the sheriff's controversial theory, hoping that re-interviewing key witnesses might spark new memories or inconsistencies. But more than anything, the team wanted to bring a sense of renewed hope to Tara's family. The announcement of the task force reignited national interest. True crime journalists revisited the story, podcasts dedicated episodes to her case, and online communities began sharing theories, tips, and even enhanced versions of the Polaroid photo. For Patty Dole, Tara's mother, it was bittersweet news. She had fought tirelessly for decades to keep the case alive, even after her health began to fail. Sadly, Patty passed away in 2006, 7 years before the task force was formed. Still, her determination had left a mark on everyone involved. As one investigator said at the time, "This is more than a case file. It is a promise to a mother we never got to keep." Over the following years, the re-examination led to new interviews and fresh forensic testing. But the findings were closely guarded. Officials shared little with the public, saying only that progress was being made. The phrase ongoing investigation became both a shield and a source of frustration for those who had waited decades for closure. And yet, the creation of that 2013 task force marked a turning point, the moment when a forgotten file became active again. It reminded everyone that cold cases do not die. They wait. They wait for technology to evolve, for people to come forward, for courage to outweigh fear. And in Tara Calico's case, that wait was far from over. On June 13, 2023, 35 years after Tara Calico's disappearance, the quiet halls of the Valencia County Sheriff's Office once again echoed with her name. At a carefully organized press conference, Sheriff Denise Vigil stepped up to the podium and delivered the words the community had been waiting decades to hear. "We believe we have made significant progress in the case of Tara Calico." Her tone was measured, her expression serious. For the first time in over 3 decades, officials publicly confirmed that new evidence had been gathered enough, they said, to justify forwarding the case to the district attorney's office for potential prosecution. It was the moment that sent both hope and skepticism rippling through New Mexico. For years, promises of breakthroughs had come and gone. But this time, the sheriff's office emphasized that the evidence was not just another theory or unverified tip. They described it as substantial and verifiable, though refused to share specifics. Detectives revealed that after re-examining witness statements, forensic reports, and physical items from the 1988 scene, they had identified new persons of interest. The identities of those individuals were sealed under court order, a legal measure to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. What was clear, however, was that the focus had shifted away from speculation and toward accountability. The announcement marked the culmination of 10 years of renewed investigation by the task force created in 2013. They had quietly gathered data, compared DNA samples, digitized decades-old photos, and cross-referenced vehicle records from the late 1980s. Each small piece had finally begun to align. To the public, it was the most tangible progress in years. But for those close to the case, the emotions were complicated. Hope had become a dangerous thing, something that lifted you up only to drop you harder each time. The sheriff's office, cautious not to overpromise, made it clear this is not a closed case. But it is no longer cold. For the first time, Tara's story felt less like an unsolvable legend and more like an open wound beginning to heal. Journalists revisited old footage of the 1989 Polaroid, comparing it to digital composites and modern renderings. Online forums lit up again with speculation. Was the sheriff referring to the same suspects Renee Rivera once mentioned? Was new forensic technology able to tie someone to the scene? Though official answers remained locked away, there was a quiet sense that justice long delayed might finally be within reach. The idea that someone could still be held accountable after all this time gave renewed purpose to everyone who had followed the case since the beginning. In that moment, Tara Calico was no longer just a face on a missing poster. She was a symbol of persistence, of memory, and of how far determination can carry a family and a community searching for truth. And while the sheriff's announcement did not solve the mystery that day, it did something just as important. It reminded the world that Tara's story was not over. Not yet. After the 2023 announcement of a major breakthrough, the focus of the Tara Calico case shifted from detectives to prosecutors. The district attorney's office for Valencia County took custody of thousands of pages of files, a massive archive of witness statements, police reports, forensic photos, and interview transcripts spanning more than 3 decades. Their mission sounded simple on paper: decide whether there was enough evidence to finally bring someone to court. But anyone who has worked with cold cases knows how complex that decision can be. The files were not neatly organized stories. They were fragments of a tragedy told through time, faded notes, conflicting statements, missing pieces. The prosecutors had to reconstruct a case built in the 1980s using the tools and standards of the 2020s. That meant examining whether DNA or trace evidence still existed, whether witnesses were alive and credible, and whether the alleged suspects could even be charged under current statutes of limitations. A senior attorney working on the case described it as building a house from ashes. Many of the original investigators had retired or passed away. Some witnesses had moved away or refused to talk. Memories had blurred. The challenge was not just about facts, it was about time. Still, there was determination in every word the office released. They confirmed that a dedicated team of state prosecutors, forensic analysts, and investigators were working together to evaluate every lead turned over by the sheriff's department. The focus, they said, was on finding legal certainty, not public speculation. According to local reports, the prosecutors divided the case into separate sections. Physical evidence review, testing any remaining biological material using modern DNA technology. Witness testimony evaluation, determining whether statements from 1988 to 1989 could still be admitted in court. Suspect analysis, assessing whether probable cause existed to issue indictments. Behind closed doors, analysts cross-referenced each report with digital databases and newly available forensic databases. In one interview, a legal expert noted, "Even if we know who did it, that is not the same as proving it beyond a reasonable doubt." That single sentence captured the painful heart of the Tara Calico investigation. Law enforcement could have strong suspicions, even confessions whispered in private, but without evidence that can withstand the courtroom. Justice remains just out of reach. For the Calico family, it was another emotional test. After decades of unanswered questions, they finally saw progress, but also knew that legal progress moves slowly. As one family friend said, "We have learned not to celebrate too early." But it is something, and that is more than we have had in a long time. As of now, the district attorney's office has not announced any formal charges. The review continues, with each document offering the faint possibility of closure. For Tara's case, this stage is critical. It is not just about uncovering truth, it is about making that truth hold up in a court of law. And until that happens, justice remains waiting like the unopened file that still bears her name. In the summer of 2025, more than 3 decades after Tara Calico's bike vanished into the desert heat, investigators turned their attention to a place few had ever dared to look: an abandoned copper mine, hidden in the rugged hills north of Belen, New Mexico. The tip came quietly. From deep within the old case files, a small reference made in an interview long forgotten, now re-examined by modern investigators. It mentioned a remote pit used decades ago for waste disposal, where something might have been buried shortly after Tara disappeared. To most, it sounded like another dead end. But to the task force, it was a location that had never been properly searched with today's tools. So they returned, this time armed with ground-penetrating radar, drones, and forensic geologists. The mine, long abandoned and partially collapsed, stretched beneath the desert like a maze of rusted tunnels and sunken chambers. It was the kind of place where time stood still, where the air was thick with dust and silence. For days, investigators worked in the suffocating heat, mapping the terrain and drilling small cores into the earth to detect organic compounds and trace biological material. They also deployed fly traps and microsensors, techniques used in modern forensic anthropology to detect human decomposition even decades later. Locals watched the operation unfold from a distance, their curiosity mixed with unease. After all these years, the idea that Tara's remains could be hidden so close to home was both heartbreaking and strangely comforting. Maybe, finally, they would find her. The sheriff's office confirmed that the search was based on credible new leads and part of the evidence forwarded to the district attorney's office earlier. They did not say who provided the information, only that it was supported by multiple witness statements and geographic data suggesting activity in the area around the time Tara disappeared. No official confirmation has yet been made about what was found. Authorities remain tight-lipped, citing an ongoing investigation. Some reports hinted that small fragments of material possibly related to clothing had been recovered for testing, but no DNA results have been released publicly. For the Calico case, this search represents something profound, not just a quest for evidence, but for closure. For 37 years, Tara has been a name without a resting place, a story without an ending. If these tunnels hold the answers, they could finally bridge that silence between truth and rumor. In interviews, Locals who grew up hearing the story say they still drive past the desert roads where she once rode. "You can feel her there," one woman said. "It is like the land remembers." Whether or not the mine reveals the truth, the effort itself speaks volumes. After decades of darkness, people are still digging not just through soil and stone, but through the layers of time and secrecy that have buried one young woman's story. Somewhere beneath the desert, perhaps, lies the final chapter of Tara Calico's ride. And until that chapter is written, the search will continue. Even after nearly 4 decades, the FBI has never closed Tara Calico's case. Her photograph still appears on the Bureau's official kidnapping victims list, a quiet but enduring reminder that the search for answers is not over. In bold letters beneath her picture, one line stands out: "Reward up to $20,000 for information leading to the recovery of Tara Calico or the arrest and conviction of those responsible." To most people, a reward is just a number. But in cold cases like this, it is a message, a way of keeping the door open, a signal to anyone who knows something that the system has not stopped listening. The FBI's involvement began early, back in 1988, when local investigators requested federal assistance to trace the mysterious Polaroid photograph that appeared in Florida. Agents interviewed witnesses, examined transportation routes, and coordinated with authorities across multiple states. Yet, when the photo yielded no concrete leads, the Bureau's role became mostly supportive, assisting when new evidence or credible tips surfaced. But even decades later, the agency's cold case and violent crimes divisions still monitor the file. Every so often, the case resurfaces internally when a new lead comes in, when technology evolves, or when a citizen submits an anonymous tip that might connect to Tara's disappearance. According to FBI officials, they still receive dozens of submissions each year about the case letters, phone calls, and even hand-drawn maps from people convinced they know where Tara might be. Most turn out to be false or unverifiable, but each one is logged, reviewed, and compared to the existing file. The continued federal reward has also inspired a small but passionate network of online volunteers, amateur investigators, podcasters, and true crime enthusiasts who dedicate their time to analyzing old photographs, witness accounts, and geographic clues. For many, it is not about the money. It is about giving voice to someone who can no longer speak for herself. In 2024, the Bureau quietly reaffirmed its commitment to the Calico investigation, updating her case profile and reposting her photo across social media as part of its Still Missing campaign. The post reads simply: Tara Lee Calico disappeared on September 20th, 1988. She was 19 years old. Someone knows the truth. Those words, "someone knows the truth," have become a kind of mantra. Because even after years of silence, it is clear that the truth is not lost, only hidden. Somewhere out there, a witness, a confession, or a forgotten piece of evidence could still unlock everything. For the Calico family, the reward is more than an incentive. It is a symbol of persistence. It tells the world that the story of a young woman who vanished on a bicycle is not forgotten by time or by law. It means the file remains open, active, and alive in the hands of those who refuse to give up. And as long as that line stays on the FBI's wanted page, the case of Tara Calico is not a closed chapter. It is an unfinished sentence waiting for someone, somewhere, to write the truth. After all these years, the searches, the theories, the photographs, and the promises, the case of Tara Calico remains officially unsolved. Yet, those closest to the investigation say the mystery is no longer one of ignorance, but of proof. In recent interviews, law enforcement officials have hinted that they know what happened that September morning in 1988 and, perhaps more importantly, who was responsible. Sheriff's deputies, retired investigators, and even prosecutors have all suggested that the story behind Tara's disappearance is known within a small circle of people, but that the legal threshold for conviction has not yet been met. That is the cruel paradox of justice. Knowing is not the same as proving. Evidence may fade, witnesses may die, and records may disappear, but truth endures quietly, buried beneath layers of fear, guilt, and time. For investigators, that is the battle they continue to fight, turning long-held suspicions into evidence strong enough to withstand a courtroom's scrutiny. Still, behind the guarded statements and sealed files, there is unmistakable confidence. When the Valencia County Sheriff's Office released their 2023 update, one line stood out. "We believe this case will be resolved." Those words, simple as they were, carried decades of weight. They meant that the investigators had not given up, that they believed the threads of this story still lead somewhere, perhaps to a confession, perhaps to the long-missing remains of a young woman who deserved to come home. For Tara's surviving relatives, it is a mixture of hope and exhaustion. Many of them have lived their entire adult lives waiting for an answer. They have seen false leads rise and fall, heard rumors whispered in small-town diners, watched documentaries promise new evidence, and endured endless speculation online. But through it all, they have clung to one truth: Tara was real, she was loved, and she deserves justice. The tragedy of Tara Calico is not only in her disappearance, it is in the silence that followed. The silence of those who might know more. The silence of years where the case lay dormant. The silence of justice delayed. And yet, her story refuses to fade. It lives in every officer who still reads her file, in every journalist who refuses to let her name be forgotten, and in every viewer who sees that haunting Polaroid and wonders what really happened. As one investigator put it recently, someone out there has carried this secret for nearly 40 years. Secrets have a way of surfacing. All it takes is one person to finally tell the truth. Until that moment comes, Tara Calico's case remains open, a quiet but powerful reminder that time can bury evidence, but not conscience. Her bike ride may have ended that morning in 1988, but her story continues riding forward, carried by those who still believe that even after decades of silence, justice can still find its way home. And so, we reach the end of Tara Calico's story, or rather, the part of it that the world knows. From that bright New Mexico morning in 1988 to the dim halls of the sheriff's office in 2025, her name has never faded. Each decade brought new whispers, new clues, and new hope. Yet the heart of the story remains the same: a young woman who set out for a simple bike ride and never returned, and a community that refused to stop searching for her. Tara's case is more than a cold file or a haunting photograph. It is a lesson in persistence, love, and unfinished justice. Her family's courage kept the investigation alive long after most would have given up. The officers who inherited her case treated it not as a task, but as a promise. And even today, those who hear her name, whether in New Mexico or across the world, feel that strange pull to know what truly happened. Maybe one day, someone will step forward. Maybe one sentence, one forgotten memory, or one fragment of truth will finally unlock the silence. Until then, Tara's story will continue to echo, a reminder that time can't bury everything, and that even in the longest shadows, someone still remembers. Thank you for staying with me through this journey, through every lead, every photograph, every unanswered question. If you believe in keeping these stories alive, in giving voice to those who can no longer speak, then do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true stories just like this one. I am glad you were here tonight. This was the story of Tara Calico and the truth that still waits beneath the desert sky.